edition of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator at the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at KU. Hello and welcome to another episode of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator for the KU School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Joined today by KU alum Nick Krug. Nick, welcome.
Hello. Good to be here, Steve. Thank you so much.
Photography. I know anytime I talk to photographers, it sounds like a lot of times that interest starts early in their career.
Yeah.
Do you still remember that first time you picked up a camera, took a photo, or have you always liked photography?
I've always liked photography. I grew up in a household that appreciated art. My dad was a graphic designer. He had lots of photo annuals all around the house. In particular, he had a Nikon F camera that was always in his studio at home. And as a kid, I'd go in there and mess around with it and probably ruin a bunch of his film, like messing with the dials. But I loved all the sounds of it. I loved the way it clicked, the way that it clicked. I loved how the sound of the precision, and then, later on, I came to school here at KU, and I started in the School of Fine Arts, and my initial intent was to become a graphic designer, but I really gravitated to my photo classes, and it kind of took off from there. And then I made my way to the School of Journalism, but we can get to that in a little bit, or do you want me to go right into it?
Yeah, go ahead and talk about it.
I remember walking, I was literally right across the street over at Strong Hall, and my friend Tara was working for the UDK. And we were walking up, and there was like it was like an exposition of all these student groups were trying to recruit people to come be a part of their various groups. And she had her camera, and she was photographing the sailing club. And I was just watching her just kind of moving around and, just photographing people getting close, getting far away, getting the sail. And I was like, oh my God, that looks like so much fun. It just opened this idea that someday I could get that kind of access to really interesting people. And so I was like right there, like the next day, seeing what I could do to be a part of the staff here.
And when you were a student at KU, I'm trying to do the math in my head, were you about to transition to digital? I mean, were you still doing film, or was it all digital by the time you were here?
So I was no. We were pretty much we were doing some digital. I believe Rich Clarkson, actually the famous alum, he was nice enough to donate a bunch of the initial Nikon D1s to our staff.
Okay.
So it was a fantastic way to learn and get into digital photography. But a lot of us still had like film cameras and stuff. So we were back at the end of the building here. There was a dark room where you get in there, you lock the door, and you roll the film, and you stick it in the canister, and you wait for 15 minutes or whatever, and that's what happened. But
so were you sad when that transition happened? I know a lot of photographers, they really love that art of seeing that photo come to life, or were you like, I'm ready for digital?
No, I think early in my career, even when digital cameras were still like relatively unaffordable for somebody like me, I was still working with my film cameras, and at a school I went to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and I remember I would have to go to Walgreens at night and have them process my film in 15 minutes, then take it back to my house and scan it and email it to the Post-Dispatch, and that didn't suck when that stopped. So there were some hiccups when we first started the transition to digital, but I'm not looking back. So
you mentioned St. Louis Dispatch, and that was an internship?
No. So when I first graduated, I kind of worked there as a stringer.
Okay.
I was probably shooting 6 to 7 assignments for them a week, and it was fairly fast paced. It was interesting going from a college town and covering university to going to a relatively big city and being all over the place, all throughout the suburbs, covering sports for them, and it was for real. It was, and I really cut my teeth there, as much as I did here, working for the EDK, and it got me ready for my first job. Yeah.
And that first job was in Topeka, right?
Hired
by Earl Richardson.
Hired by Earl Richardson. Yes. I thank Earl to the nth degree for hiring me. I'm not sure I would hire me, but he did, and I'm really glad he did, because I've always admired his work. He's just such a talent, and he had a great staff, and they had an incredible tradition there at the Capital Journal. Rich Clarkson, David Allen Harvey, Jeff Jacobson, friend of mine, just tons of people have come from there and done really great things, and I was just super happy to be a part of that. So.
Any idea why Earl did hire you? What was the hook?
I don't, I knew Earl when I was, God, I really don't know. I knew Earl when he was working at the Lawrence Journal World, and I was a student at the UDK, and I would shoot basketball games next to him, and I just always appreciated his work. There's so many people that were just doing incredible things when I was younger that I was just paying attention to him. Like, why can't I do stuff like that? Why can't I get those photos? And why do my photos suck and his are so good? And then, he was one of those people.
And then after that, you made the move to Lawrence Journal World, correct?
Yes.
And how long were you there?
I was at
or
the
full time anyway.
I think I started the Journal World in.
I bet 05, wasn't it?
05, yes, and I left in 2017,
Okay.
I believe. So I was on vacation while I was still a staffer at the Topeka Capital Journal, and I got a call from my boss, Chris Landsberg at the time, who was director of photography after Earl, and he was like, "Hey," he's like, "Are you really in Seattle hanging out with your brother, or are you interviewing for another job?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, we're gonna go get beers and dinner." And he's like, "Well, you got a voicemail on your phone here at the office." And I'm like, "What?" And it was Bill Snead from the Lawrence Journal World, seeing if I was interested in the job for the Journal World. Bill just did not know that Chris and I shared a voicemail, and Chris was my boss, but Chris was super cool about it. And he was like, "Just make sure you give me a good heads up, whatever you decide." So I had the entire vacation to kind of mull it over, and I ended up going to the Journal World and spent a long time there and learned quite a bit.
I know in your 12 years there, you took a lot of amazing shots, a lot of sports photos, and the first one I think of, the Mario Chalmers shot.
Sure, yeah.
What do you remember about that? That was back in 2008, the championship game against Memphis, to send the game into overtime. Did you know you had the shot?
Yeah, I think I did. I think I did. But I was just, oh God, I remember Thad Allender and I shot that game together. Thad was with the Journal World also, and I think the night before we were sitting there, I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight. Like, I'm just so nervous. This is the most nervous I've ever been, and and we got there and we both had a hell of a time and got some good photos. And I remember when that shot happened, I was thinking like, all right, they're marching the ball down the court. Whatever happens here, it's going to be monumental. So it's time to not shoot so tight. Like, I need to pull back a little bit and take in some of whatever's going to happen. I need the shot clock, I need the basket, I need the ball, I need the person shooting it. And thankfully, I had the presence of mind to do those things.
And did you have a choice on what line you were sitting on, opposite?
No.
You had no choice. So you were assigned to shoot from behind.
Assigned to see, and that's the case most of the time. It's very rare that you go to any sort of athletic event at that scale, and you can just walk around and do whatever you want. So.
And do you feel you could have got a similar type shot from the opposite end, or would you have preferred to get it from that angle?
I think the shot really was from that side.
Yeah.
You had to be shooting back into it, because if you're shooting straight into it, it's going to be too tight, and the crowd and the fans are so far away, it just loses the effect that you don't have the shot clock. You don't have the shot clock above. You don't have the other players watching the ball. You don't, it's. And it was fairly congested. I saw photos that people had from that end of the court where the shot happened, and a lot of them got blocked. It's just, it happens. That's part of the game. So. And
more recently, I think you took the David McCormick shot against North Carolina with about 22 seconds left, kind of like a little, not quite a hook shot.
Sure.
A little different angle.
Yeah.
You're still baseline, right, but just farther down?
So I actually had two different versions of that shot. I had one from the camera that I was shooting in my hand, right? And it was a tighter, more vertical version of it. But the one that has some popularity was shot from my remote camera, which is off to the side. It was off to the side of the court, and I had pointing back at the bucket with a 50 millimeter lens on it, and specifically set for a shot like that. Something that shows the stage, something that is wide enough where if something really big happens, you're going to get it in there. So.
Sounds like there's a lot of concentration involved when you're shooting live and you got the remote. How does your brain process all that?
I really, I think like I
There's
mentioned,
our muscle memory now. Maybe it's all.
No, yeah, I mean, it's. Oh, I think there's a lot of time spent thinking about scenarios like if KU's up with this amount of time, what lens are going to be shooting me with, what's the picture going to be, or if they're down and it's a Mario Chalmers sort of situation and they're coming at me, what am I going to rely on here? And then you can drive yourself crazy thinking about it. But at a certain point, you just have to shoot the game and just trust yourself that you've done the due diligence to have various remote cameras capturing the angles and that it's going to work out. Sometimes it does. So
I haven't been at too many sports bars lately, but I know the Mario shot is everywhere in Lawrence. What do you get a kick out of seeing your work presented that way?
Yeah, it's fun. Like I think I told my wife, like, I'm not like big in Paris, but I'm kind of big in this one dude's basement. He's got a bunch of my photos. So yeah, it's really cool. It's just cool to cover something that people really, really care about, and to be able to bring that excitement to them, as often as I can, as often as what my ability will allow. So yeah.
And I know, obviously, you take a lot of pride in your sports photography. I know you take a lot of pride in portraits.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I know you helped us out at our career fairs, taking a LinkedIn.
Oh, right.
With the light and the
Right.
backdrop.
Yeah.
Students love it.
Sure.
What is it about portraits that really gets you motivated?
I don't know if I'm necessarily motivated for the LinkedIn portraits, but no, they're cool. And anything I can do to help students with their careers is awesome, and I'm happy to do that. And it's fun to meet people in those situations. But I do also, in a way, like shooting somebody's portrait it's a bit like sculpting, I mean, and I know these are people with feelings and stuff, but as far as like aiming the light in certain ways and positioning them, like you're trying to show these people for who they are, and it's a process. It doesn't always start immediately. Like people have to get comfortable with you. You have to get comfortable with them and develop a rapport with a person to where they're willing to show you who they are, and I know that's very vague, but I don't know if I can make it any simpler than that. Like you have to be comfortable in those situations, and they have to trust that you're comfortable. They have to be comfortable with you. So
are the basketball players, KU, are they pretty receptive? Because I know you do a lot of cool pregame where
sure.
They're holding basketball, leaning against a rack of basketballs. I mean, they game for pretty much anything you promote? Or
they really are. There's only been a very few scenarios where like the person's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then you just move on because you're not going to dwell on it. But one thing I found that is super helpful to do is come with ideas, right? Sometimes I would literally sketch out like how I want a person to be, how I want them to stand. There was one time I shot the cover of the Journal World's KU Sports preseason magazine, and Kevin Young was on it. And I drew, this is when he had his big afro, and I drew him, and I'm like, this is your afro, and I drew it on, and he like signed it for me. And he's like, here, I'm gonna sign that for you. But so like I think it's important to come with ideas, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take other ideas of nice photographs that I've seen, and I'll print them out, and I do this with weddings and like portraits too, and I'll show people like, this is something that I think somebody did once that looked really cool. Why don't we do that? Or something similar to this, or like maybe not quite this photo, but something like that. And then, if you show a basketball player like LeBron or like Kobe looking cool, they're like, oh yeah, like that looks cool. And and then they're kind of game to do. They understand what you're going for. So, I think as much as you can, like help people come to that visual understanding, it's a good thing.
And while you're at the Journal World, I think it was about 2015 when President Obama visited campus.
Yeah,
I know you got some pretty cool photos of him on campus. What was that experience like?
Oh my gosh, Mike Yoder was the director of photography, and Mike could have easily taken that one himself, and he was so generous to like allow me to do it. I was just like, it was awesome. But I think from like 5 a.m. until like sometime in the middle of the afternoon, I don't remember the exact time frame, but I was really only in the presence of the president for maybe 50 minutes or something like that. And that included his speech at wherever it was, Anschutz Pavilion down there. Yeah. And there was, like 10 minutes in a school, and like, it was phenomenal. Just watching people react to him and just how excited he made people. It was fun to see him, but it was also fun to see people around him, like teachers and kids, just like, oh my gosh, I remember you from TV, and just people who came to see him. And yeah, it it was touching, and it was just, yeah. But I also got like a good feel for what the people who cover the president every day are up against. Like,
Right.
you know, there's so limited access, and you just have to make the absolute maximum of what you're allowed. So, and I think Pete Souza, Kansan, has really
photographer.
done incredible things with that. So yeah, I follow his work all the time.
And I know you don't shoot KU basketball full time anymore. You kind of do KU home games and tournaments, and like you said, K-State.
Yeah.
And you've transitioned the last few years to wedding photography. More pressure getting that last second shot or a wedding? Is there more pressure?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's different kinds of pressure. Like with the last second shot, you're at the mercy of what happens in front of you. If it's a wedding, if you're well planned, if you planned well and you've kind of gone over the timeline of the day when things are going to happen, you know what the light's going to look like at certain times, you know where things are going to happen, you can still get yourself stressed out. You know, there's always some stray dog like groomsman that's just like not falling in line or not doing shit, you know, or is absent. You need that person to be there, but stuff like that happens. But I feel like I stress myself out in the planning, so in the day of, I'm not stressed out. I'm like ready to go. So, yeah.
I know I have a daughter who's getting married in September, so we've been thinking about this a lot. I know there's like must-have photos at the wedding, but probably at the same time when you're talking to the client, I mean, you want to have some creative freedom, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you got a story to tell. You want more than just the post family photos.
Yeah.
So what kind of approach do you take to a client when you're talking about, okay, here's what I envision?
Yeah, well, I think most of I don't know if we go down to like the minute by minute, like I'm going to be shooting this picture at this exact second, but I think they take a look at my work and they'll look at the galleries and they'll be like, okay, well, this is in all the galleries, so this is clearly an important photo to him, or this is, you know, so I think that there's a general understanding that I'm going to get the important stuff, and hopefully they're hiring me for my eye and not, you know, not just because I'm a smiling face, you know. But
Well, I saw one of your online reviews. It said the next best thing to our wedding ceremony are the photos Nick shot. So you're doing great work.
Sweet. That's sweet. I have great clients. So and I think you know what means the most is obviously stuff like that, but also like if, you know, the mother or the bride, like at the end of the night, she's like, oh my God, you work so hard. I'm like, thanks. So like that's really sweet of you, because I feel like I do.
So I would assume there's a lot of, you know, self-promotion, marketing, hustling. I mean, how do you get the word out? I mean, is it kind of is it like word of mouth pretty much? And they, like you said, you share your samples, and it's like, hey, think of Nick.
I think it's been quite a transition from being a full-time journalist, where you have a newspaper and a website and various outlets of social media, Facebook and Instagram, to kind of do your promoting for you, so you don't have to think like that. But I have had to think like that, and I'm probably not good enough at doing it for myself. I probably need to do more of it. But I think the old school journalist in me wants to reserve what I push out there to be only the best, right? I don't want to be there every day, you know, trying to push the envelope, because then I feel like you fall into the ubiquity of everything else that's on Instagram and Facebook. So I try to respect people's attention as much as I can, and just bring the A game, I guess. So.
And I know I follow you on social media, and I know you have a young family, daughter and son. Yeah. And I'm always impressed how you're able to, like, what I consider kind of an ordinary day or ordinary situation, you kind of bring that to life. I mean,
thanks.
How do you make that happen?
Oh,
I mean, I think about, you know, a photo with Santa Claus. I think your son one time wasn't too happy. Right? They were kind of the frown. So you capture that right moment.
Well, that was definitely an iPhone photo, and I am pro iPhone in the family life situations. But I do break out the other cameras fairly often too. My kids were they were super jazzed to go see the Santa Claus and the gingerbread display in Topeka, and then we showed up, and like they just walked up to Santa Claus, and you just see like the life get sucked out of both of them. They're like, Santa's like trying to pull my son in, and he's like leaning away. My daughter looked so disappointed, but stuff like that's, you know, they're so much fun, and I feel like I don't have to try that hard with them. So they're cute, and you know, they can be cute reading a book, or they can be cute playing in the water outside, and you know, so yeah.
And before you have to go, one last question.
Sure. Yeah.
I know kind of the photojournalism, that careers kind of change. You know, a lot of times you graduate, you're thinking magazine, newspaper.
Sure, yeah.
What advice do you have, say, to someone who's graduating from KU who wants to do photojournalism for a career? I mean, what should they be doing?
There's so many avenues to take this skill set. So many ways you can go with it. But one thing that I would say that I wish I would have done when I was much younger is to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Be comfortable doing things that you're nervous about doing. You know what I mean? Just push yourself, challenge yourself, and surround yourself with people who inspire you. I think when I was here, I had so many just great, super, not to go back to the word, but inspiring people who were really hungry to get better that I was working with at the Kansan, and we hung out a lot. And we looked at each other's work a lot, and we critiqued each other, and we developed some tough skin, So, but students definitely need to get out and pursue internships. But one thing I'll say is the students that I see coming from here that I meet a lot at KU, like I'm super impressed with how driven they are, and how, like, you can tell that this person is not just here, like, absorbing whatever is happening to them in the game. They're out going making photos. They're pursuing cool photos of the fans. They're just, you know what I mean? They're not just a fly on the wall. So,
nope.
So yeah.
Well said, Nick. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. It's been fascinating to follow your career for, wow, it's hard to believe it's been over, 20 years now?
Thanks, man.
But hey, cheers to your careers.
Cheers.